Hey, what's up, folks? Welcome back to On Texas Football, and welcome back to another edition of Football Theory. I'm lifetime Longhorn Rod Babers, joined by, we all know, a man who needs no introduction, the latest member and the newest member of the On Texas Football family. My man Jeff Howe is joining us as well. All right, Jeff, we just had the official end to the football season, the Super Bowl, all said and done, the new champions in the NFL, Philadelphia Eagles. Congrats to them. But as a football theorists, essentially, we are students of the game, and I want to talk about lessons that we learned from the big game that we watched over the weekend. So we'll get into that. Lessons that can apply to Texas football, of course, Texas-sized lessons. So we'll get to that here in a second. Before we do, let's thank our sponsor, Laura Baker. Football Theory is brought to you by accomplished Austin realtor Laura Baker. Laura and the Andy Allen team at Keller Williams can handle all of your real estate needs in the Austin area. Laura is not only a diehard Longhorn fan, but a longtime Austin real estate expert. So please give her a shout today, 512-784-0505. That's 512-784-0505. Or you can reach out at Laura at andyallenteam.com. So thank you very much to Laura Baker for sponsoring Football Theory, longtime sponsor of Football Theory. So really appreciate her and her support. All right, Jeff, let's get right to it. All right, I got a few things. I don't know if we'll get to all of them. I'm just going to try to throw them out there. One of the things that really stood out to me, Xavier Worthy, congrats to him. All right, first Longhorn to score a touchdown in the Super Bowl.
Yes.
I believe, shout out to my Matt Butler, who threw this out there via Twitter. 5th most receiving yards in Super Bowl history. He set a record for rookie receiving yards in the Super Bowl. I mean, did all types of things. And most of that damage was done actually in the second half. He had 8 receptions, 157 yards, I believe, and most of that, 2 touchdowns, and all of that pretty much in the second half. I want to get to this though, because I saw also via Twitter, and I put this out there via Twitter at Rod Babers in the Twitterverse, that Devontae Smith also was the first player drafted out of Alabama to score a touchdown. And I just thought to myself, man, 2 historic football institutions, blue bloods like Texas and Alabama, what are the odds that they both score their first touchdown in this Super Bowl for representing those prestigious football programs? But also, they both led, I believe, their teams in receiving too. But what brought it back to me was not only setting, obviously, making history, being the first from their programs to score a touchdown in the Super Bowl, but also being Sark receivers, being Sark guys. And it brought me back to a theory that I have about. So I think Sark kind of changed the I don't know if he did it intentionally, maybe unintentionally. He really did change the overall evaluation and maybe what the valuation and what the priorities they value in these evaluations when it comes to wide receivers. And here's what I talk about. Okay, so I look at BMI. BMI is one of those cumulative things I just throw out there, right? I believe it's your weight divided by your height, something like that. So since 2000, 25 years now of sample size, there have been 25 wide receivers drafted in the first 2 rounds with a 25 body mass index or less. All right. These are guys who are frail, small, really small receivers. In the last 4 years, you've seen, this is crazy, 11 of them have come in the last 4 years. So there have been 25 receivers drafted with a 25 BMI. It's easy to remember now. 25 and 25. 25 wide receivers in the last 25 years in the first 2 rounds of the NFL draft drafted with a 25 BMI or less. And I take it back, actually 11 of those have come since 2021. That is crazy. So that means Devontae Smith, to me, he was I don't know if you can call it the turning point. Maybe he was kind of the catalyst that really started to change how some of those frail, small-ish wide receivers were drafted. They always been in the NFL, but they never really been valued really high in the draft. And since Devontae Smith, which is a Sark wide receiver, he was the OC there at Alabama when he won his Heisman Trophy, they've started to look at these wide receivers a little bit differently, and it was because of that mold. That mold was weaponized by Sark. That's my theory. And I still think it holds, and I think it was showcased in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, it's almost redemption for Sark, because you could accuse Sark of one of his guys kind of broke the system and was the last of a dying breed. We think about John Ross, right? John Ross is kind of the last guy that we saw that people are like, all right, we're done drafting guys off of just 40 times at the combine. Like, we're done spending top 10 picks off guys that are just fast. And I think that's what separates. You look at another Sark guy, right? Jalen Waddle. He didn't play much in 2020. And that's why Devontae Smith had a lot of that production at Alabama during his Heisman year funnel his way, because Jalen Waddle, and when he only played like 4 games during that COVID year because of the injury. So, I mean, and Devontae Smith had a great year, not taking anything away from him. But I think you look at the design of Sark's offense, those guys have gone kind of the leaner. And I think a lot of times we can get too caught up in height and weight that we don't look enough at body structure. And I think that's what you even said this early on when we started talking about Xavier Worthy back in the Blitz days in 2021 during his freshman year. You were the first to point it out to me, like, well, his play strength, he plays a lot stronger than, man, X as a freshman, whatever he was listed at, that was soaking wet with 2 bricks in his pocket. I mean, he was probably 150, 155 pounds as a freshman. So, but his play strength was something you pointed out. We saw Devontae Smith. It was play strength. Jalen Waddle. It was play strength. He was explosive. You watch Jalen Waddle play basketball. Like, he was just a naturally explosive athlete that had it in his hips and in his lower half and in his core. I remember you telling me, during your time in Detroit, the late Charles Rogers was the number 2 overall pick in the draft. Oh man, he's 6'3" and he's 200 pounds and he can do this. I remember you talking about, like, the chest was sunk in and his body just didn't look right. Yeah. So I think 2 things here, Rod. I think the design of Sark's offense has taken the smallish wide receiver from maybe you could only have one of those guys on your roster to that position, that type is no longer a detriment to me on offense. It's advantageous for me to have that guy in a more space and pace game. And number 2, I think the NFL's gotten better about, hey, let's look at body structure and body development rather than just looking at numbers on a piece of paper that he's this height or this weight.
Yeah, you can make the argument that Sark is doing that too. The wide receivers he's bringing in now are a little different. They're a little longer. Some are a little taller. And he still got his Sark type of wide receivers. But the guys like Parker Livingstone, who's 6'4" or something like that, 6'3". The guy, Ryan Wingo's like that too. He's a little bit thicker. I think they want to get guys who are a little bit taller, a little longer, and then pack some weight on them, which they're going to do with Parker Livingstone at one point. And I think ultimately that'll give them kind of the best of both worlds. These guys that can still run a little bit and they can still put the good weight on them, good armor, as I'm talking about. So I'll limit the guys he's bringing in now. They are a little bit different. Wingo's a little different. Livingstone's a little different. Khalil Lockett's like 6'2", 175. He'll probably add on 15 pounds, something like that, 10 to 15 pounds before he leaves.
Jamie French, same way. I mean, I saw Jamie French at the gym today. I mean, that's the way his body's going to go.
Yeah. So I think you're right about the body structure. I think Sark is looking at that a little bit too. That's a really good point, Jeff.
I'll say this about Ryan Wingo real quick. I compared him to this guy just in terms of body type because Ryan Wingo is my ideal receiver. If you look, we'd all love to have Randy Moss or Calvin Johnson, right? Love to have a freak or Megatron. My ideal receiver, you say, Jeff Howe, who is your ideal receiver? It's Andre Johnson. Give me 6'3", 215, 220. But people forget this. Andre Johnson was a track guy first and foremost. So yeah, you give me like a running back build with a guy that's like a legit 10-5, sub 10-5 guy. Yeah, that's my ideal guy. And I think this is Sark too, Rod, kind of evolving that. Like, all right, I made it work with these guys, and I can still, you can still have an Xavier Worthy type or Devontae Smith type. But if I can get the speed, the elusiveness, the breakaway ability to run the rainbow crossers in my offense, to the run to daylight approach in my offense, if I can get that with a little bigger body type, with a little more endurance, then I don't have to worry about that guy maybe holding up for a whole year, and I can just kind of continually just funnel usage to him.
Yep. No, I totally agree. I think that's kind of where you're going. Another lesson learned in the Super Bowl, just watching it, and it was a great job by Vic Fangio that really, you look at that overall game plan, it should go into Hall of Fame. I've never seen Patrick Mahomes look so discombobulated. The Eagles did not blitz one time, 0 blitzes, 42 dropbacks they defended, got 16 pressures, 6 sacks, most in Patrick Mahomes' career. They played cover 4 like 60% of the time, played zone all but 2 of the dropbacks that they defended. I mean, it was a master class. And what I found interesting is that, Vic Fangio had no success going up against Patrick Mahomes as a coach or as a coordinator. He actually was 0-8 going into that Super Bowl. So he knew there's a lesson that I talk about all the time. To win big games, you must break tendency. Mm-hmm. Also, you could argue to win games against familiar opponents, you must break tendency. One of my criticisms of Sark, and I don't have a lot of them because he's done a great job, is that he doesn't break tendency enough in those big games in situations like that. I've said in Ohio State, I studied this offense a lot. You do as well. I didn't see a lot of tendency breakers. I mean, at all. Jim Knowles admitted the last 2 plays, including the strip sack, fumble recovery for a touchdown, he called 2 defensive plays in the red zone he hadn't called all season long. They were not on film at all. There was no way to prepare for him. That's why Quinn Ewers looked so confused. To win big games, you have to break tendency. And that's exactly what Vic Fangio did. It was the 3rd highest rate of cover 4 in the last 7 years in any NFL game. They played zone coverage, like I said, every snap except for 2. Who the hell does that? That's crazy. And it was the 4th defense in the since 2016 not to blitz 1 time in the game. That was just a lot of things that you just couldn't account for. A lot of tendency breakers for him. I think ultimately that's what wins you big games. I didn't see enough of that from Sark. I expected to see some of the 6-0 line package, which had done really well versus 3 high defenses. Didn't see any of that. That would have been a tendency breaker because you didn't run it at all during the season. He ran quads for 3 plays. Also unbalanced, works really well in his offense versus 3 high. Sorry for just 3 plays in that game. Hell, one of their biggest plays was a quads formation, that 18-yard run by Will Howard, I believe. That was a quads formation. The pony package was actually working pretty good, as it always does. You didn't run enough of that. Multi-motion plays, targets to motion, all those things were working well. I don't think you use enough of those concepts. So whether it be breaking tendency or whether it be being an extremist, I got to tell you, playing zone coverage every snap except for 2.
Yeah.
That's being that's being extremist in your philosophy. So I think there are 2 things missing for Sark to win big games: breaking tendency and becoming an extremist. I remember the Washington game, both of them. I talked about an empty formation was just eating Washington up. They couldn't stop it. They couldn't stop empty formation. They didn't stop it when you played them in the Alamo Bowl. They didn't stop it in the Sugar Bowl. They couldn't stop the pony package in the Sugar Bowl. You ran it. Your second drive of the game, scored a touchdown on 7 plays, averaged 10 yards per play running it, and ran it 2 plays for the rest of the game. Why not be an extremist if they can't stop it? I think those are 2 things that I learned from the Super Bowl. Vic Fangio was an extremist when he needed to be, and he broke tendency ultimately. You have to win big games.
Yeah, I when I look at Sark, typically when you see him, he's going to break tendency, Rod. We see it in the opening script. Like if you think back to games where Sark has broken tendency, you can go back to those first 15, 20 plays and whether it's, using a multi-back set, whether it's using, your wide receivers are leveraged differently, their splits are different, whatever. That's usually when we see it from Sark. And the frustrating thing early in his tenure was we would see that stuff in the opening script. It would be successful and we wouldn't see it again. Then it got to the point, in 2023 where we would see that stuff in the opening script and it almost like Sark became better at setting stuff up. Like I'm going to come back to that. I'm going to have a base run play or a base pass play and I'm going to be setting it up and then boom, I'm going to come back to that I ran earlier, but I'm just going to lull you to sleep with this. I thought Brian Harsin, of all the Texas offensive coordinators I've ever seen, I thought Brian Harsin was the best at that, just in terms of, hey, I may be running inside zone and I may run it a lot and it may not be successful, but trust me, I'm using it to set something up later in the game. I'm using it to set up a shot play, and it made sense. I just think Sark got to the point, we talked about this with the red zone woes, I just think he got to the point where later in the year, he just kind of ran out of stuff. And it makes you appreciate some of the football savants we've seen in our lifetime. Like I hear the Patriots guys talk all the time, it's not so much about Bill Belichick, but about Ernie Adams. Like their last practice of the week would be a walkthrough and it'll be Ernie Adams drawing up cards. And it'd be some formation or a front or a coverage or whatever. And you'd have Tom Brady complaining, no, I haven't seen that on film. They don't run that. I've watched every game. And be like, no, this defensive pass game coordinator, when he was a GA at Notre Dame back in 1986, they ran this in a game against Northwestern. It's just put as much data into it as you can, just so you could always have something to come back to, because you never know when you're going to need that tendency breaker. We go back to that Rams Patriots Super Bowl. It was boring. remember how much was it 22 personnel that the Patriots used, and then they couldn't find
22 personnel, and they went empty formation. It had been done 7 times the entire season by all 32 teams in all 16 games. So it was not on film by anybody.
And they used it on a game where they're having a Super Bowl.
Yeah. And they had only practiced. They didn't even practice it. They discussed it in a meeting prior to the game. They had a walkthrough, and then they discussed it. We may have to use it just in case we run out of stuff. And that is the ultimate example to Sark. You need to pull out stuff, and you may have to use it. And that was stuff you left in the bag. That stuff you left in the bag. I know you did. I do enough research. You left stuff in the bag. Don't leave it in the bag. You know what I mean? Like, and I think that's kind of the lesson that you learn. Like when you're in a big game like that, pull it all out of the bag. Pull it all out.
When I heard Jim Knowles say that about the coverages in the red zone, that's what I went back to that Rams Patriots Super Bowl. Like you had to go so deep in your bag that like, look, we're probably gonna have to just talk about this on the sideline and hope we execute it because I literally have nothing left at this point.
That's what that's ultimate compliment. Yeah, that's an ultimate compliment to Wade Phillips. It really was. Like his defense, they had to go to something that that teams had done less than 10 times all year to try to beat them. Okay, I want to talk about something else I learned in the Super Bowl. I think is going to connect to Texas. I think the new cheat code in football right now is scramble, is the ability to scramble. Now quarterbacks with functional mobility, but quarterbacks that are smart scramblers and they know when to do it. And it was actually on display in that game. Jalen Hurts. It usually is Patrick Mahomes that kills teams on scrambles. Only 6 quarterbacks have rushed for 50 or more yards in consecutive playoff games in a single postseason. The 6 quarterbacks are Steve McNair, Russell Wilson, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Otto Graham, and Patrick freaking Mahomes. Like, so you know what I mean? Like, how the hell? Because he turns into a mobile quarterback, right? When the game's on the line and when it's kind of deep into the season. And Travis Kelce, no surprise, he leads the NFL since 2018 in receptions on scrambles and yards receiving on scramble drill, right? But Jalen Hurts, he's the one that actually hurt the Kansas City Chiefs with scrambles. He was 4 of 6 for I think a 4 of 6, like I don't know, like 60 something yards throwing the football on scrambles. He had 5 rushes, scrambling for almost 12 yards per rush scrambling. And I've been talking about this for a while. The most efficient play and effective play in football right now is the scramble. And the NFL is averaging more yards than the average yards per pass, which is, I think, averaging nearly 8 yards per scramble. And if you go look at the last 4 quarterbacks to play in the final 4 of the NFL in the conference championships, they all were the top 4 most efficient scramblers based on EPA generated per scramble. Josh Allen, Pat Mahomes, Jaden freaking Daniels, and Jalen Hurts.
Yeah.
It's a cheat code. And this is my thing. I believe Arch Manning is that. Now, Arch Manning's scramble rate is actually around the same as Quinn, and it probably should be. He shouldn't be scrambling that much, and Sark's not going to encourage that. But per scramble, he's going to be 3 times, 4 times more effective than Quinn was. By the way, Quinn was averaging like 8 yards per scramble. He was during his career. That's not bad. Right now, if you go look at Arch Manning, I consider the competition, and it's a very small sample size. He's averaging in his career around 12 yards per scramble. That's what you're going to get from him per scramble. And if he learns how to be smart in the way that he scrambles, I'm telling you, man, it's going to be a weapon that Texas hasn't had access to since Sam Ehlinger, but he'll be better than Sam. He's a better passer than Sam was.
Yeah. It'll be it'll be probably pretty similar to Colt, in terms of the athletic ability and the running ability. I mean, Colt was a guy that you didn't want. And in hindsight, maybe you went to the well one too many times. You didn't want him running all that much. But he was a guy that, hey, when everything breaks down, we trust him to create. My thing with the scramble, Rod, is who's going to be that receiver that Arch ends up having that rapport with in the scramble drill situations. Remember, early in Sam's career, he didn't find that guy. And there were a lot of frustrating times where it's like, man, your quarterback's doing everything he can to give you a chance to extend this play and extend this drive. And everybody just standing around like bumps on logs. Like nobody's doing anything. Nobody's moving. As it evolved, that's pretty much how Lil Jordan Humphrey in a lot of ways got to the league. Go back and look at how many plays he made on scramble situations with Sam. And as time went on, Devin Duvernay got better and other guys got better at the scramble drill. That's going to be my big thing. Who's going to be that guy that's going to kind of make be their guy that, hey, in a scramble situation, Arch knows I'm going to find so-and-so, they're either going to run to open grass, they're going to settle down in an open spot, whatever. I know I can look for him in one of those spots. And you think back to the best, the reason why the scramble is so important is this, as defenses get more complex. And if you have a rush like the Eagles have, if you can get pressure with your front four, then you can play whatever coverage behind it you want for the most part. You want to be zone team, man team, cover 3, cover 4, whatever you want to do. You can have the right rushers in. You can have the right coverage called. You can have everything can be right. You can have the personnel matchups across the board. But the one thing you can't account for is what that quarterback can do with the ball in his hands when things break down. The prime example, like you think about all the great scrambling quarterbacks we've seen in college football, Johnny Manziel, Vince Young, Cam Newton. Go back and look at how many times they made defensive coordinators wrong when technically like they were right up until the point that guy pulled the ball down and started running for his life.
Yep.
And not that I'll put him in the same category with those guys, but Cade Klubnik, go look at what he did in that playoff game. There were times where Texas had everything was right, but it was Cade Klubnik's ability to buy himself an extra couple seconds for somebody to get open that kept Clemson in that football game. So I agree with you 100%, Rob, that scrambling dynamic, assuming this wide receiver core, this offensive skill core becomes really proficient at understanding scramble drill situations. Yeah. That's going to, like I said, that's going to be something Texas hasn't had since Sam, but it'll probably be the dynamic Texas hasn't had probably since Colt.
I like that. Yeah, you're right about that. And Texas Colt had great rapport with his receivers, right? Him and Jordan Shipley, that was a great bromance. Quinn and Quan Cosby, they obviously had a great rapport and chemistry as well. That's going to be big. All right, last nugget I want to talk about here. We can kind of combine them, getting back to that fantastic Vic Fangio game plan. That game plan really reminded me of Texas's defensive philosophy. Now, Vic Fangio notoriously has always talked about, I want to win numbers in the passing game. So he wants to be able to outnumber you in the passing game, 4 versus your 3, 3 versus your 2. And he wants to win with matchups up front in the running game and with pass rush. And that's what Texas did this season. I mean, you're going to look at it. Texas was, you're going to look at it overall. They were 100, I believe they were 113th overall in man coverage rate. They were like 118th 118th in blitz rate. They didn't blitz a lot. Obviously, no blitzes by Vic Fangio in that game plan. They won with matchups up front. That's why the NASCAR package was so great. Yeah. NASCAR package was so great because it just won. It was great matchups all across the board. You had great DBs and you were really deep there. And Colin Simmons and Trey Moore and Anthony Hill, those guys won easy matchups in the passing game there. And I think ultimately so it reminded me a little bit of Texas just philosophically, but there's no doubt the old adage that, protection beats coverage. No question. We know that. Go look at 4th and 13. They have 6 defenders. Arizona State does versus your 3 receivers, and you have match protection, pristine match protection, and you score a touchdown. Go look at even in the Super Bowl with the McDuffie, who's an all-pro, was getting cooked out there. He's an all-pro. He's legit. But when Jalen Hurts has time and he's got good receivers like, Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown, protection's going to beat your coverage every damn time. Don't matter. But pressure will always be protection. We know that now, watching 2 GOATs, Tom Brady and Patrick Mahomes. How did they lose? They lost because teams were able to apply way too much pressure and overwhelm them. The lesson for Texas is, and you got elite pass rushers now, Colin Simmons, Trey Moore's coming back. That's a beautiful thing. I think Anthony Hill is a guy that can potentially have double-digit sacks. I think he had 8 this year. You had 46 sacks in 2024. I went and looked at it. 7 of the top 12 college football playoff teams had 40 or more sacks. Georgia had 37, and they were right outside the top 15. So basically, if you're in the top 15 in sacks, that's a really good trend for you in terms of your defense being able to make a lot of plays. Texas did next year, 46 sacks or more. They should be hovering around the 50 sack range potentially. And that ultimately, we talked about it. You said Cade Klubnik, you brought up the good quarterbacks, the higher caliber quarterbacks they played later in the season that made more plays against the best pass defense in the country. But when you have really good quarterbacks who get really good protection, they can make some plays. Or like Sam Levitt, they're scrambling around making plays. Or like Will Howard, they're doing both. There's only so much you can do defensively. That's why the pass rush it's so critical that the pass rush not only get there, but it get home. We saw that when Michael Penix was able
100%.
to make plays against that Texas secondary too.
Yeah. Reserve the right to rush the passer. The reason why those dynamics tend to slant in your favor when you can use a NASCAR package, when can you use that? Certified no doubt passing downs.
Yeah.
And you get that way by being a really good run stopping defense. You get there by being really good first and second down. So when you hear this we hear this all, whether it's Jahdae Barron or Anthony Hill, whoever it's been, when you hear these Texas guys talk about, hey, we got to stop the run first and foremost, they know the importance of that, because they know if we get the third down, it's over. We're dictating the terms of the game now. We can unleash the dogs, and it doesn't matter, again, what coverage you want to play behind it. We're going to win up front. One of those four guys, and last year with that NASCAR package, it was Moore or Burke or Sorrell or Broughton or Simmons, whoever was in there. One of those guys is going to win. You can't double team all those guys. One of those guys is going to find a way to win a matchup, and more often than not, they did. But you get that way, and that was the advantage that the Eagles had in that Super Bowl. Was they were really good on first and second down, got the Chiefs in the third and long. Well, not only does the offense's playbook shrinks, you become less predictable. So, hey, even if we've got four guys with their ears pinned back getting after the quarterback, if we don't get there first, our coverage is going to be good enough, or we've got somebody playing the sticks to where if it does break down, if you dump the ball off or that quarterback breaks contain, we're trusting that you're not going to get the 15 to 18 yards you need for this first down. Yep. So we're fine if he breaks contain. It doesn't matter. So that's what you got to do. Just reserve the right to rush the passer, earn the right to rush the passer by playing really good defense on first and second down. Then the game is yours once you get the third down, and you're dictating the terms of the game now.
Totally agree, man. That's a big part of it too. All right, there you go. So lessons, Texas-sized lessons related to Texas football that we learned from the Super Bowl. Before we get out of here, let's thank our sponsor once again, Laura Baker. Football Theory brought to you by accomplished Austin realtor Laura Baker. Laura and the Andy Allen team at Keller Williams can handle all of your real estate needs in the Austin area. Laura is not only a diehard Longhorn fan, but a longtime Austin real estate expert. So please give her a shout today. 512-784-0505. That's 512-784-0505. Thank you very much to Laura Baker and her team for being part of our team here at On Texas Football and sponsoring Football Theory. Thank you as well, Jeff, for all the knowledge, man. Great stuff as always. I'm a smarter football theorist listening to some of your theories. Thank you as well to Matthew behind the scenes. He always does a great job. And thank you to all of you guys for watching and for listening. And until next time, for Jeff, for Matthew, and for accomplished Austin realtor Laura Baker, I'm lifetime Longhorn Rod Babers. Good morning.